Nathan fired first. His shot took out the guard in the eastern tower, and then chaos erupted across the camp. Kevin opened fire from the tree line, keeping the wall guards pinned down while Pete led the others toward the gate. Lisa stayed back with the wounded members of their group, but she had gathered rocks and was throwing them at any Corvani head that appeared above the wall. Inside the main building, Danny moved before Overseer Keth could give an order. He threw himself sideways behind a bank of equipment as the warrior's rifle fired. The bolt burned through the air where his chest had been a moment before. Danny grabbed the first thing his hand touched, a heavy piece of machinery, and threw it at the warrior's head. The Corvani stumbled back, and Danny ran. He burst through a side door and found himself in a storage area. Crates lined the walls, filled with supplies and equipment. He grabbed a metal rod and turned to face his pursuers. Overseer Keth appeared in the doorway alone. He had sent the warrior elsewhere, probably to deal with the attack outside. The commander held no weapon. His 4 hands were empty at his sides. "You are a strange creature," the commander said. His translator gave the words a flat quality, but Danny thought he heard something like curiosity beneath them. "You were bait. You were meant to die screaming while we hunted the stalkers above your heads. Instead, you fight. You kill my warriors. You send signals into the void." Danny kept the metal rod raised. "I told you. We do not surrender our own." Overseer Keth took a step closer. "I have hunted many species across many worlds. I have seen creatures flee, and I have seen creatures freeze. I have never seen prey turn and hunt the hunters. Maybe that is because you have never hunted humans before." The commander's head tilted. Perhaps we chose poorly when we raided your freighter. We thought you were soft, weak, like the other species. We have taken for our games. You thought wrong." Overseer Keth was silent for a moment. Outside, the sounds of battle were fading. Danny heard human voices shouting, heard the camp gate crashing open. "His people had won. The stranger," Keth said. "The one who crashed his ship into our platform. He killed 8 of my warriors alone. When he was wounded, when he was dying, your people did not leave him behind. They carried him through the jungle while stalkers circled in the darkness." "Why?" Danny lowered the rod slightly. "Because that is what we do. We take care of each other. We fight for each other, even when it is hard. Even when it costs us everything." The commander considered this. "In Corvani culture, the weak are left behind. They slow the hunt. They endanger the strong. We do not understand your way." Danny shook his head. "Maybe that is why you lose." The door behind Keth burst open. Nathan stood there, covered in blood and dirt, a Corvani rifle in his hands. He aimed at the commander, his finger on the trigger. Keth did not move. He looked at Nathan with those strange, wide-set eyes and waited for death. "Nathan," Danny said. "Wait." Nathan's aim did not waver. "He tried to kill you, and he failed," Danny said. "He's unarmed. We do not kill unarmed enemies." Nathan's jaw tightened. For a long moment, Danny thought he would fire anyway. Then, slowly, he lowered the rifle. Overseer Keth watched this exchange without speaking. When Nathan stepped aside, the commander walked past him and out into the camp. Danny followed. The battle was over. The remaining Corvani warriors were surrounded, their weapons on the ground. Pete stood over them with a captured rifle, and Kevin was helping Lisa tend to a wounded member of their group. The sky above was clear, and the sun was beginning to set over the purple jungle. Keth looked at his defeated warriors, then at the humans who had beaten them. He spoke to his people in their clicking language, and one by one, they rose and walked toward the main gate. "You are letting them go?" Nathan asked. Danny nodded. "They have no ships, no weapons. They can wait in the jungle until their people send a rescue party. We will be gone by then. Ke Tehate turned back. He studied Danny, then Nathan, then the others. "You are not what we expected," he said. "When we tell our people about this hunt, they will not believe us. They will say we failed. They will say we were weak. Tell them the truth," Danny said. "Tell them what humans do." The commander was silent for a long moment. Then he did something Danny had not expected. He inclined his head, a gesture that might have been respect, and walked away into the jungle with his warriors following behind. The rescue ship arrived 2 hours later. It was a patrol vessel from a frontier station, a crew of 8 who had picked up the distress signal and come to investigate. They found 9 former captives and 1 wounded salvager standing in the middle of a Kovani base camp, surrounded by fallen enemies and empty weapons. The patrol captain, a woman named Rachel Hood, looked at them with disbelief. She asked what had happened, and Danny told her the short version. Captured, chained, rescued by a man who crashed his ship for strangers. She listened without interrupting, and when he was finished, she shook her head. "You are telling me that one man started this?" she asked. "He came alone to a Kovani hunting moon, destroyed their ships, and held off their warriors until you could escape." Danny looked at Nathan, who was sitting on a crate while a medic worked on his wounds. "He did not hold them off alone," Danny said. "He just showed us that it was possible to fight back. We did the rest together." The medic helped Nathan to his feet. He was pale from blood loss and exhaustion, but he was smiling. The patrol captain approached him and asked if there was anything he needed. Nathan looked at Danny, at Lisa, at Kevin and Pete, and the others. He looked at the people he had saved and who had saved him in return. He shook his head. "I have everything I need," he said. The shuttle lifted off as the last light faded from the sky. Through the window, Danny watched the jungle shrink below them, the purple trees becoming a dark blur against the black. Somewhere down there, Overseer Keth and his warriors were making their way through the wilderness, defeated but alive. Danny wondered what stories they would tell about this hunt. He wondered if the Kovani would believe them. Lisa sat down beside him. She was tired, her clothes torn and stained, but her eyes were bright. "What do you think happens now?" she asked. Danny considered the question. The frontier was vast. There were 1,000 dangers waiting out there, 1,000 species who might see humans as prey or obstacles or threats. But there were also allies to be found, friends to be made, and a universe full of possibilities. "I think we go home," he said. "And when we get there, we tell people what happened here. We tell them that humans do not leave each other behind." Nathan settled into the seat across from them. He had been listening, and now he nodded. "That is the message," he said. "That is what we need the galaxy to understand. We are not easy prey. We are not soft or weak. And when you take one of us, you take all of us." The shuttle docked with the patrol ship, and the refugees from Veth 4 stepped into the cargo bay. The crew greeted them with food and blankets and medical supplies. Someone asked Nathan how he had survived alone against an entire hunting party. Nathan looked back at Danny and smiled. "I was never alone," he said. "In the records of the Corvani Empire, the hunt on Veth 4 was marked as a failure. Overseer Keth was questioned by his superiors and demoted for his losses. But in the stories that warriors told each other in quiet moments, the hunt was remembered differently. It was remembered as the day they learned what made humans dangerous. It was not their weapons or their ships or their technology. It was something simpler and more terrifying. It was that they never left their own behind." The Kovani found the caves at dawn. Danny heard them coming before he saw them. The clicking of their language echoed through the tunnel entrance, followed by the hum of their weapons charging. Kevin raised the rifle and looked back at Danny with wide eyes. Danny shook his head. Not yet. They had spent the night preparing. Pete had examined the cave system and found what he was looking for. The tunnels branched in 3 directions, and the rock above them was old and cracked. A construction worker knew how to build things. He also knew how to bring them down. Lisa had gathered more plants during the night, venturing into the jungle with Maria while the others stood guard. She had found what she needed to make a kind of smoke bomb, a mixture that would burn thick and irritate the eyes. It would not stop the Corvani, but it would slow them down. Nathan was on his feet again, though he moved stiffly and kept one hand pressed to his bandaged side. He had slept for 3 hours and then insisted on helping with the preparations. Danny had tried to argue with him, but Nathan had looked at him with those hard gray eyes and said that he had not come this far to lie down and die in a cave. Danny respected that. The Corvani entered the tunnel in a single file. Their tall bodies bent low to fit through the narrow passage. There were 6 of them, heavily armed, with the confidence of hunters who expected easy prey. They did not know about the trap. Pete waited at the second branch of the tunnel, his hands on a support beam that he had spent hours weakening. When the first 3 Corvani passed his position, he pulled. The ceiling came down with a roar of dust and stone. The tunnel collapsed behind the lead group, cutting them off from the 3 warriors behind them. Danny heard screaming, the high-pitched clicking sounds of Corvani in pain, and then silence. Lisa threw her smoke bomb. The thick gray cloud filled the tunnel, and Danny heard the lead warriors coughing and stumbling. Kevin opened fire. The rifle kicked in Kevin's hands, but he held steady. The first shot took a Corvani in the chest and sent it sprawling. The second missed, but the third caught another warrior in the leg. The creature fell and did not get up. Nathan appeared from a side tunnel with a rock in his hand. He brought it down on the head of the third warrior before it could raise its weapon. The Corvani dropped without a sound. Danny grabbed the fallen rifle and turned toward the collapsed section of tunnel. The 3 warriors on the other side were digging through the rubble, their 4 arms working fast to clear a path. He did not give them the chance. He fired through the smoke until the rifle clicked empty. When the dust settled, nothing moved on the other side. The battle was over in less than 2 minutes. Pete emerged from the side tunnel, covered in rock dust but grinning. "That worked better than I thought," he said. Lisa checked the fallen warriors. 2 were dead. 1 was unconscious but breathing. She looked at Danny, and he understood the question. "Tie him up," Danny said. "We might need information." They bound the unconscious Corvani with strips of cloth and left Maria to guard him. The rest of the group gathered in the main chamber, where Nathan spread a rough map in the dirt. He had drawn it from memory, marking the location of the base camp and the routes through the jungle. "The camp is here," he said, pointing to a spot north of their position. 3 miles through heavy jungle. The stalkers hunt mostly at night, so we have maybe 6 hours of daylight to make the trip. If we move fast and stay quiet, we can reach the perimeter before dark. And then what? Kevin asked. His voice was steadier now, his hands no longer shaking. The battle had changed him. "You said there are at least 20 warriors there." Nathan nodded. "There were, but I killed about 8 before I reached the clearing, and we just took out 6 more. That leaves maybe 10, plus the commander. The odds are getting better. Still not good," Pete said. "No," Danny agreed. "But we have something they do not." He looked at the group, at the faces of people who had been helpless prisoners 12 hours ago and were now fighters. "We have surprise. They think we are prey. They think we are running scared through the jungle, waiting to be hunted down. They are not expecting us to come to them." Nathan smiled. "I like the way you think, Danny Cole." They moved out an hour later, leaving Maria behind with the bound prisoner and instructions to release him after they were gone. Danny did not want to kill an unarmed enemy, and leaving him tied up forever was not an option. Maria understood. She did not like it, but she understood. The jungle was different in daylight. The purple trees were less menacing, and the sounds were softer. Birds sang in the branches overhead, strange creatures with too many wings that watched the humans pass with curious eyes. The stalkers were nowhere to be seen. They were nocturnal hunters, and the sun had driven them into their dens. They reached the base camp perimeter at midday. Nathan had been right about the defenses. There were walls made of metal panels, guard towers at each corner, and a single gate facing south. Inside, Danny could see the main building where the Corvani kept their equipment. The communication array was on the roof, a tall antenna that reached toward the sky. Kevin crouched beside Danny and studied the camp through the scope of his rifle. "I count 8 guards," he said. 4 on the walls, 2 in the towers, 2 at the gate. Nathan pointed to the eastern wall. "There is a gap there," he said, "where 2 panels do not quite meet. Big enough for 1 person to squeeze through." Danny nodded. "I will go. I am the smallest." Nathan shook his head. "You do not know how to operate the beacon. Then you will have to teach me." Nathan looked at him for a long moment, then sighed. He explained the controls, the frequency settings, the codes that human patrol ships would recognize. Danny listened carefully, memorizing every detail. Lisa touched his arm. "Be careful," she said. Danny smiled. "I always am." He moved around the perimeter, staying low, using the jungle as cover. The gap in the wall was exactly where Nathan had said it would be. Danny squeezed through, scraping his shoulders on the rough metal, and emerged inside the camp. The main building was 50 feet away. Danny crossed the open ground in a crouch, his heart pounding in his chest. He expected to hear shouting at any moment, expected to feel the burn of an energy bolt in his back. But nothing happened. The guards were watching the jungle, not the inside of their own camp. They still believed they were the hunters. Danny reached the building and found an unlocked door. Inside was exactly what he had hoped for. Communication equipment lined one wall, screens and keyboards covered in symbols he did not understand. But the beacon was different. It had a simple interface, clearly designed for emergency use. Danny entered the codes Nathan had taught him and watched the display light up. A signal went out into space. A distress call on human frequencies, broadcasting their location to anyone listening. Danny allowed himself one moment of hope. Then he heard the alarm. He ran for the door, but it was too late. A Corvani warrior was waiting for him, forearms holding a rifle pointed directly at his chest. Behind the warrior stood Overseer Keth, his narrow face twisted with something that might have been anger or might have been amusement. "The signal has been sent," Danny said. "Help is coming." Overseer Keth stepped closer. He studied Danny the way a scientist might study an interesting insect. "You should have taken my offer," he said. "Quick deaths. Clean deaths. Now you will watch your companions die slowly, and you will die last." Danny met the commander's eyes. He thought about Nathan, who had crashed his ship for strangers. He thought about Lisa, who had tended wounds in a cave while monsters circled outside. He thought about Kevin, whose shaking hands had grown steady. "We are humans," Danny said. "We do not surrender our own." Outside, the first shots rang out. Nathan and the others had begun their attack. Danny reached the stranger just as he hit the ground. The man was bleeding badly, his side torn open by what could only have been stalker claws. His face was pale in the moonlight, and his breathing was shallow and fast. But he was alive. Lisa arrived a second later and dropped to her knees beside the wounded man. She had been a botanist before the raid, but she had grown up on a farming colony where the nearest doctor was 100 miles away. She knew basic medicine. She knew how to stop bleeding. She tore a strip from her shirt and pressed it against the wound. The man groaned but did not wake up. Kevin stood behind them, holding the Corvani rifle he had taken from a dead guard. His hands were shaking so badly that Danny was worried he might shoot one of them by accident. But he was there. He had not run. That was enough. The other captives were free now. Pete Hardy had helped Danny pull the remaining stakes from the ground, while Lisa and Kevin had gathered around the stranger. There were 9 of them in total. 9 humans who had been bait an hour ago and were now standing in a clearing surrounded by hostile jungle and alien hunters. The Kovani guards had retreated to their platforms after the stranger's attack. They were waiting for reinforcements, or perhaps just trying to understand what had happened. Danny knew they would not wait long. The commander, the one called Overseer Keth, had already made his offer. He wanted the stranger surrendered. He wanted the humans to give up their only hope in exchange for a cleaner death. Danny had no intention of accepting that deal. He knelt beside Lisa and looked at the stranger's face. The man was older than Danny, maybe mid-40s, with gray in his short hair and scars on his hands that spoke of years of hard work. He had come alone to a Kovani hunting moon. He had crashed his own ship to destroy their landing platform. He had fought stalkers in the dark with a knife and survived. Danny did not know this man, but he owed him his life. Lisa looked up. The bleeding has slowed, she said, but he needs real medical care. Something to close the wound, antibiotics, fluids. Without that, he will not last the night. Danny nodded. Then we need to find shelter. Somewhere we can treat him properly. Pete moved closer. He had found a piece of metal pipe somewhere, and he held it like a weapon. The jungle is full of those things, he said. The stalkers. We cannot just walk out there. I know, Danny said. But we cannot stay here either. The guards will come down eventually. They will call for backup. And when that backup arrives, we are all dead. A woman named Maria Vance spoke up. She was a pilot, one of the crew from the Morning Star. She had been quiet since the capture, but her eyes were sharp. The stranger had a ship, she said. He crashed it into the landing platform. But the Kovani must have other equipment. Communication gear. Maybe a beacon. Danny considered this. If they could find a way to send a signal, a distress call on human frequencies, there was a chance someone would hear it. The frontier was full of patrol ships and salvage vessels. Someone might come, but first they needed to survive the night. Lisa pointed toward the eastern edge of the clearing. I saw something earlier, she said. When they were bringing us here, there were rock formations in that direction. Some of them looked like cave openings. Caves would give them shelter from the stalkers and a place to hide from the Kovani. Danny made his decision. We go east. Pete, help me carry him. Kevin, you take point with that rifle. If you see anything move, anything at all, you tell us before you shoot. Understood? Kevin nodded. His hands had stopped shaking. They moved as a group, Danny and Pete, carrying the stranger between them, while Lisa guided them toward the rock formations. The jungle was dark and full of sounds, but the stalkers kept their distance. They had learned caution from the stranger. They had learned that humans were not easy prey. The caves were exactly where Lisa had remembered them. The entrance was narrow, barely wide enough for 2 people to walk side by side, but it opened into a larger chamber that was dry and defensible. Danny set the stranger down on a flat rock and posted Kevin at the entrance with the rifle. Lisa went to work on the wound. She had found plants during their journey, things she recognized from her studies. Some had antiseptic properties. Others could numb pain. She crushed them together and applied the mixture to the stranger's side, then bound it tightly with strips torn from their clothes. The man woke up an hour later. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, and then sharpening as he took in his surroundings. He tried to sit up and gasped at the pain. Easy, Lisa said. You lost a lot of blood. You need to rest. The stranger looked at her, then at Danny, then at the others gathered in the cave. Who are you people? We are the ones you came to save, Danny said. My name is Danny Cole. This is Lisa Grant. The young one at the entrance is Kevin Park. You saved our lives." The stranger was silent for a moment. Then he laughed, a rough sound that turned into a cough. He pressed his hand to his bandaged side and shook his head. "I did not save anyone yet. I just made a lot of noise and got myself torn up by an alien cat." "You killed 3 stalkers," Danny said. "You destroyed their ships. You gave us a chance. That is more than anyone else has done for us." The stranger studied Danny's face. "My name is Nathan Webb. I was tracking the Morning Star. Heard the Kovani took survivors. Figured someone should do something about it. So you came alone?" Pete asked. "No backup? No plan?" Nathan shrugged and winced. "The plan was to cause enough chaos that you could escape. The backup was whoever survived." Lisa shook her head in disbelief. "You crashed your ship into their landing platform. You had no way off this moon." Nathan met her eyes. "Neither did you." The cave went quiet. Danny looked at this stranger, this man who had thrown away his ship and nearly his life for people he had never met. He thought about the offer the Kovani commander had made. Surrender the stranger. Receive a quick death. There had never been a choice. "Not really." Danny sat down across from Nathan. "The Kovani have a base camp somewhere on this moon. Communication equipment. Maybe a beacon. If we can reach it, we can send a signal. Call for help." Nathan nodded slowly. "I saw the camp from the air before I crashed. It is about 3 miles north of the clearing. Heavy guard presence. At least 20 warriors, probably more. Then we will have to be smart about it," Danny said. "We have 9 people, 1 rifle, and a man who killed 3 monsters with a knife. I have seen worse odds." Nathan looked at him for a long moment. Then he smiled. "You are crazy, Danny Cole." Danny smiled back. "I learned from the best." Outside the cave, the jungle stirred with the sounds of hunters searching for their prey. But inside, 9 humans and 1 wounded stranger began to plan their escape. The chains were cold against Danny Cole's wrists. He had been hanging from the metal stake for 6 hours now, and his shoulders burned with a pain he had learned to ignore. Around him, 8 other humans were chained to similar stakes, spread across a clearing in the alien jungle. The trees here were not green, but a deep purple, and they rose so high that Danny could barely see the sky through their twisted branches. He was a mechanic. 3 weeks ago, he had been fixing an engine coolant leak on a cargo freighter called the Morning Star. Then the Kovani raiders had come. They had killed the captain and 2 crew members who resisted. The rest they had taken alive, and Danny had not understood why until now. A Kovani overseer walked between the chained humans, his gray skin catching the fading light. He was tall and thin, with 4 arms and eyes that sat too far apart on his narrow skull. When he spoke, the translator implant they had forced into Danny's neck converted the clicking sounds into flat, emotionless words. The overseer explained their purpose. They were bait. This jungle moon was called V4, and it served as a private hunting ground for the Kovani warrior caste. The creatures they hunted were called Vethstalkers, massive 6-legged predators that could tear through metal with their claws. The stalkers were drawn to fear. They could smell it, taste it in the air. And nothing produced fear quite like helpless prey chained to the ground. The Kovani would wait on elevated platforms in the trees. When the stalkers came for the humans, the hunters would kill them. It was sport. It was tradition. It was how young Kovani warriors proved their worth. Danny looked at the woman chained to the stake nearest to him. Her name was Lisa Grant. She was a botanist who had been studying plant samples on a frontier colony when the raiders took her. She was younger than Danny, maybe late 20s, with short brown hair matted with dirt and dried blood from a cut on her forehead. She met his eyes, and he saw the same cold determination there that he felt in his own chest. On his other side was Kevin Park, a communications officer who could not have been older than 22. Kevin was shaking. His fear was obvious, and Danny worried that the stalkers would come for him first. The overseer finished his explanation and walked away without looking back. Guards took positions around the clearing, but they kept their distance. They were not there to protect the humans. They were there to make sure none of them escaped before the hunt began. Danny tested his chains for the 100th time. The metal was strong, but the stake it was attached to had been driven into the ground. He looked at the soil around the base. It was dark and damp. There had been rain recently, heavy rain that had softened the earth. He began to work his stake back and forth, tiny movements that the guards would not notice. Lisa saw what he was doing. She looked down at her own stake and began to do the same. The sun set quickly on Veth 4. The purple sky turned black, and 3 small moons rose above the tree line. The jungle came alive with sounds Danny did not recognize. Clicks and whistles and something that might have been screaming in the distance. Kevin was crying now. A man named Pete Hardy, a construction worker with thick arms and a shaved head, told him to be quiet. Pete's voice was rough, but Danny heard the fear underneath it. They were all afraid. The difference was what they did with that fear. The first stalker appeared an hour after dark. Danny did not see it at first. He heard it, a low rumbling sound like an engine idling, and then he saw movement in the shadows between the trees. The creature was enormous. It moved on 6 legs, each one ending in claws the length of Danny's forearm. Its body was covered in black scales that seemed to absorb the moonlight. It had no eyes that Danny could see, but it turned its head toward the clearing, and the rumbling grew louder. The Kovani guards retreated to their platforms in the trees. Danny heard them speaking to each other in their clicking language, their voices excited. This was entertainment to them. The stalker entered the clearing. It moved slowly, its head swinging from side to side as it tasted the air. It was heading toward Kevin, who had gone silent, his entire body rigid with terror. Danny pulled harder on his stake. He felt it shift in the ground. A second stalker appeared at the edge of the clearing. Then a third. The Kovani had said nothing about there being more than one. The first stalker was 10 feet from Kevin when an explosion lit up the night sky. It came from somewhere beyond the jungle, a massive fireball that rose above the tree line and painted everything in orange light for a single moment before fading. The stalkers froze. The Kovani guards started shouting, their clicking voices rapid and confused. Danny heard their communicators crackling with urgent messages. Something had happened, something they had not expected. The stalkers, disturbed by the noise and light, retreated into the jungle. They did not go far. Danny could still hear them circling in the darkness, but they had stopped their approach. The Kovani commander, a veteran named Overseer Keth, descended from his platform and grabbed one of the guards. Danny watched them argue. He could not hear what they were saying, but he could read their body language. The explosion had come from the landing platform. Something had destroyed their ships. Overseer Keth issued orders, and half the guards disappeared into the jungle, moving toward the source of the explosion. The remaining guards took defensive positions, their weapons raised toward the trees instead of the clearing. Danny looked at Lisa. She had heard the explosion too. She had seen the chaos it caused, and she was pulling on her stake with renewed strength. Someone had come for them. Danny did not know who or how, but someone had found them on this moon and had done something desperate to announce their arrival. He did not intend to waste the opportunity. The soil around his stake was loose now. He could feel it giving way with each pull. He just needed more time. In the jungle, another sound joined the distant rumbling of the stalkers. It was the sound of weapons fire. Kovani weapons had a distinctive whine, a high-pitched noise that hurt Danny's ears even from a distance. Someone was fighting the guards out there. Someone was fighting, and from the sound of it, winning. The remaining guards grew nervous. One of them moved closer to the clearing, perhaps thinking the humans might try something during the confusion. He was right to worry, but he was too late. Danny's stake came free. He did not run. He did not make a sound. He simply crouched in the darkness and began working on Lisa's stake, his fingers digging into the wet soil around its base. She understood without being told. She stayed still, her eyes on the guards, ready to warn him if any of them looked their way out in the jungle. The weapon's fire grew closer, and above it all, Danny heard something else. A voice. A human voice, shouting something he could not quite make out. They were not alone anymore. Nathan Webb had not planned to survive the crash. He had aimed his ship, an old salvage vessel called the Dusty Horizon, directly at the Kovanni landing platform and jumped out at the last possible moment. The explosion had been satisfying. The landing had not. He had hit 3 branches on the way down and rolled 20 feet through thick undergrowth before coming to a stop against a fallen tree. He was 46 years old. He had been a military pilot once, a long time ago, before he decided that taking orders was not for him. Now he worked alone, salvaging wrecks and hauling cargo across the frontier systems where the law was thin and the pay was good. He had been tracking the missing freighter Morning Star for 2 weeks, following rumors and debris trails until they led him here, to a Kovanni hunting moon, to 9 humans chained in a jungle clearing, waiting to be eaten by monsters. Nathan checked his equipment. He had a knife, a pistol with 8 rounds, and a length of metal pipe he had grabbed from his ship before the jump. His ribs were bruised, maybe cracked, and his left ankle was swelling inside his boot. None of that mattered. What mattered was the mission. He moved through the jungle like a ghost. The Kovanni sent hunters to find him, and he let them come. The first one walked right past him, its forearms holding a rifle that hummed with energy. Nathan came up behind it and put his knife through the base of its skull before it could make a sound. He took the rifle and kept moving. The second hunter was smarter. It spotted Nathan from 30 feet away and raised its weapon. Nathan shot it twice with his pistol, then dropped behind a tree as the third hunter opened fire from somewhere to his left. The jungle lit up with energy bolts that burned through leaves and bark. Nathan waited, listened, and threw a rock into the bushes on his right. The third hunter turned toward the sound, and Nathan put a bullet in its chest. He had 5 rounds left. The jungle was not his enemy. Nathan had grown up on a colony world with forests twice as dense as this one. He knew how to move through undergrowth without making noise. He knew how to read the darkness, to find the paths that animals used and avoid the ones where predators waited. The Kovanni were warriors, but they were not hunters. Not really. They had platforms and technology and rifles that could kill from 100 yards. They did not know how to fight in the dark with nothing but instinct and desperation. Nathan killed 2 more guards before he reached the edge of the clearing. He crouched behind a thick purple trunk and looked at the captives. 9 humans, chained to stakes, surrounded by shadows and fear. The stalkers were still out there. He could hear them moving through the brush, drawn back by the smell of terror that hung over the clearing like fog. He counted the guards. 6 remained, plus the commander on his elevated platform. The commander was speaking into a communicator, his voice urgent. Nathan did not speak Kovanni, but he understood the tone. Panic. Confusion. The commander had lost control of the situation, and he knew it. Nathan's first instinct was to rush the clearing, kill the guards, and free the captives. But he stopped himself. The stalkers were too close. If he started a firefight now, the noise would bring them running. The captives would be torn apart before he could get them all unchained. He needed a different approach. Nathan looked at the nearest stalker. It was perhaps 50 feet to his right, crouching in the shadows with its head turned toward the clearing. It was waiting, watching. Its scales rose and fell with each breath, and its claws dug into the soil with anticipation. Hunters respected other hunters. Nathan knew this from his years on the frontier. Predators understood strength. They avoided prey that fought back. He picked up a rock and threw it at the stalker. The creature's head snapped toward him. Nathan stepped out from behind the tree, raised the Kovani rifle, and fired 3 shots into its side. The stalker screamed, a sound like metal tearing, and charged at him. Nathan ran. He did not run away from the clearing. He ran parallel to it, drawing the wounded stalker away from the captives. The creature was fast, faster than he had expected, and he felt its breath on his back as he dove behind a fallen log. It leaped over the log, claws extended, and Nathan rolled to the side and fired again. The bolt hit it in the leg, and it stumbled. The noise attracted the other stalkers. Nathan heard them coming from all directions, drawn by the sounds of battle. He was surrounded now, but that was the point. Every stalker that came for him was a stalker that was not going for the captives. He killed the first stalker with his last rifle shot, a lucky hit that caught it in the throat. He threw the empty weapon at the second one and pulled out his knife as it lunged at him. The blade sank into its eye, and the creature's weight drove Nathan into the ground. He felt claws tear through his jacket, through the skin of his side, and then the stalker went limp on top of him. Nathan pushed the body off and staggered to his feet. Blood was running down his ribs. The wound was deep, but not fatal. He had been hurt worse before. The third stalker circled him warily. It had seen him kill its companions. It was afraid of him now, and that fear made it hesitate. Nathan picked up his knife and waited. The creature turned and ran into the jungle. Nathan leaned against a tree and pressed his hand to his wound. The clearing was quiet now. The gunfire had stopped and the stalkers had fled. He could see the guards through the trees, their weapons raised but pointed at the jungle instead of the captives. They were afraid too. Good. He began moving toward the clearing again, slower this time. He had maybe 5 minutes before he passed out from blood loss. He needed to reach the captives before that happened. He was halfway there when he saw movement among the stakes. One of the captives was free. A man, tall with dark hair, was crouching beside another stake, digging at the ground. Nathan watched him work, saw the determination in his movements, and felt something he had not felt in a long time. Hope. The Kovani commander's voice echoed through the jungle on loudspeakers. He spoke in the trading language, the common tongue that most species understood. He offered the humans a deal. Surrender the stranger, the human who had come to their moon uninvited, and they would receive quick deaths. Clean deaths. No more bait. No more stalkers. Nathan expected the free captive to consider the offer. He would not have blamed him. Survival was survival, but the man did not even look up. He kept digging at the next stake, freeing the woman beside him, and then moved to the next one. Nathan smiled despite the pain. He had come alone to this moon, expecting to die here. He had not expected to find people worth dying for. He stepped out of the jungle and collapsed at the edge of the clearing. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was the tall man running toward him, the woman right behind him, and the young one picking up a fallen guard's weapon with shaking hands. They had not left him behind.